Hi, Claudia. Hi, is that Brian there?
Yeah.
We're on YouTube and we're recording.
Good evening, Justin.
Evening.
Look at Dave's wall. You hear me?
What?
Look at Dave Ginn's wall.
Yeah.
Pictures.
Yeah. All my favorite things.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen.
You're welcome. Ready to begin? Karen, we're ready whenever you are.
All right. I'll call to order the Administration Committee meeting, January 28th, 2021 at 6:30. We'll begin with roll call. We'll start with the Administration Committee members stating their name, the community they represent, then we'll move to other board members and then to PARTA staff. I'll begin. Karen Wise, City of Ravenna.
Richard Brockett, Northern Portage. I have a amendment. I got my first vaccination today.
Good for you. That's great news. Our third committee member has not arrived yet, so we'll move to the greater board. We'll start with you, Dave.
Dave Ginn, Middle Portage County.
Marvin?
Jack Murphy.
Marvin Woods, Streetsboro.
Jack
Aaron?
Murphy.
Keep going, Jack. Sorry.
Sorry. Jack Murphy, City of Kent.
I think Karen is connecting in a second. Jeff?
I believe I'm offline.
Okay, and PARTA staff and PARTA staff.
Claudia Amrine, PARTA.
Brian Troutman, PARTA.
Marcia Fletcher, PARTA. Kelly George, PARTA.
Clayton Popick, PARTA.
Z Spavel, PARTA.
And Justin.
Justin Markey from Red Andrews.
All right, so to have a quorum, we need one additional member to help us tonight. Marvin, would you be willing to do that? I'm gonna guess that was a yes, so our quorum is me, Mr. Brockett, and Marvin.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. We don't have any guest communications. We don't have any old business. We don't have any new business. We do have a resolution. Resolution number 2021-0101, a resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority, PARTA Board of Trustees, authorizing the general manager or her designee to negotiate terms of an agreement or an amendment to the existing lease agreement with the Kent City Health Department to lease on a trial basis the former Cutler Realty Group 10 Gallery ground level retail spaces of the Kent Central Gateway, located at 201 East Erie Street, Kent, Ohio. May I have a motion to approve this resolution to the PARTA board?
I move to move resolution forward.
Thank you, Mr. Brockett. A second?
I second.
Marvin, thank you. So in my words, the resolution is about this. So the PARTA board has an existing 10-year lease with the City of Kent Health Department. They've been in this agreement since August of 2020. The Kent Health Department needs more space now and possibly into the future for COVID support operations. The ground floor at Kent Central Gateway is vacant and available. It doesn't appear that extending the space to the Kent Health Department would disrupt PARTA operations in any way. I'm assuming, and we can confirm, that we'll be compensated for leasing this additional space, and at the same time doing a good public service and helping to mitigate the COVID crisis in Portage County. So are there any other comments or a formal presentation by the PARTA staff related to this resolution?
Would that be the only vaccination center in Kent?
Claudia, anyone?
Okay, sorry, we had a mic problem. I don't know the answer to that question, but we do have a presentation, a brief PowerPoint, because there are a lot of moving parts to this discussion, and it's fluid at this point. So I wanted to take a few moments to bring everyone up to speed on where we're at with it.
Can't hear you very well, Claudia. Let me see if I can adjust on my end, but
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Yeah, better? Okay. So yeah, we do have a brief presentation, and hopefully that'll help answer some of your questions. Are we ready? Okay, give me a second. Mhm. Okay. So what we're going to talk about tonight is I'll give you a brief overview of the history of the gateway. Some of you will already be familiar with this, but others may not be so much. So I wanted to just walk through how the gateway has developed and the agreements that we have in place down there now. So basically, the gateway began actually before 2010 with a lot of studies and work by a number of people between PARTA, the city, and the university. But ultimately in 2010, we were awarded funding through PARTA's Tiger Grant program to construct a multimodal facility in downtown Kent. It was to include enough parking for transit-related park and ride type of applications. The city wanted to add more parking to it to be public parking. And so in 2011, PARTA and the city established an agreement whereby the city contributed $4 million so that we could build up the deck. We remain the owner operator, and then we share the profits or losses through a formula that is in the contract. That was in 2011, and then in 2013, we opened up the gateway, the transit hub, and the parking spaces. But there's more than parking in the building, and through a process of the construction, we had to move things around a little and reduce the size. And so in the end, we ended up with some spaces on the ground level that are about 5,600 square feet that were unfinished. And in the second floor, we built that out to be a conference room space. So just to go through this for the last few years, talking about the retail spaces, we spent quite a bit of time in 2014. I think we did 2 RFPs to try to attract a developer to build out those spaces and then lease them or manage them in some way. And we just did not get any interest. The spaces are oddly shaped, they're narrow. They just ended up being a little bit awkward. And so we didn't get any takers, but Ron Burbick was already investing downtown, and he had a great love and interest for the downtown renovation. And so we entered, effective 2015, a contract that was a master tenant agreement. And that meant that we had a lease agreement with RLB Phoenix, and then RLB Phoenix had the responsibility for building out the spaces and then leasing them and keeping them filled. And we would be paid a set amount of money each year, regardless of what the status of the spaces were. So that began in 2015. And what I'm showing you now is it's a 10-year agreement. The first year, there was no base rent because that was the year he built out the spaces at his own cost. And then you can see moving through the years, the annual rent increases. Year 2, it's 20, and so forth, up until you see at year 7, where we are today, we are set to bring in $32,000 a year. But there is an optional 10-year renewal period, and the logic behind this was the first 10 years, RLB Phoenix would build out the spaces and regain their money. They would be profitable, and they would be able to pay themselves back for that build out. The second 10 years were really when we would be receiving much better rent. And so you can see that it goes up, the rent goes up significantly in the last 10 years. But this is an optional renewal. They can walk away after 10 years. We hope that wouldn't happen, but unfortunately, it does look now like that may happen. So just to kind of put this in a nutshell, the contract would have or would be able to generate about $1.3 million over the 20 years. Right now, we're still in year 7 of the first 10. So sometime last year, just to continue, in February or late 2019, I would say in the third quarter of 19, even though there have been 3 or 4 years of filling those spaces, we'd seen a lot of turnover, and a lot of the tenants had difficulty not attracting enough foot traffic, and small businesses and nonprofits kind of ended up locating there. with the exception of the anchor tenant, which was Cutler Realty. And that space was leased out to Cutler and to Group 10 Gallery through a different arrangement, but they shared that space. And then when we got to 2020 and COVID hit, we already knew, I had already had conversations that they were wanting to discuss the terms of the lease to avoid having to walk away after year 10 and have us not have them in place as we had planned. So we had a real brief conversation in February, and then COVID hit. Switching over to the second area of our building, the second floor conference rooms, we've talked about this a lot more often in the last few years, but we began using those in the early years as daily conference room rentals. And we tried our best to make that work, but it was filled with problems and it was not profitable at all. So in 2016 or 17 or so, we started exploring the idea of finding a long-term tenant. And after a number of shots at that, we did find some symmetry with the Kent Health Department, and they moved in August of this year, delayed because of COVID. Prior to that, Ron Burbick passed away over the summer. And so here's where the moving pieces come in. And when we talk about it and when I write about it, sometimes it's even confusing for me, and I think about it every day. So we have 3 agreements in place that all sort of hinge on these decisions that we need to make. First, we have the City of Kent, the 50-year agreement with the profit and loss sharing of the deck revenues. And the deck means everything. We look at the income and the expenses, and then we have a formula for if we are profitable or in the loss position. Unfortunately, 19 was a good year and we were really starting to make some traction on revenue, but 2020 pretty much killed that. So we have the first agreement, the 50-year with City of Kent. We have the second agreement, which was Ron Burbick's Phoenix contract for the retail spaces for 10 years. And then just last year, we entered into agreement with the Kent City Health Department. So they are occupying that second floor level now for at least 10 years. So today we find ourselves in year 7 of the first 10 years of the lease, Cutler non-renewed. So that the issues that ROB Phoenix was having in 2018 and 19 became worse in 2020. So Cutler was their anchor tenant. They didn't come back. The gallery closed. The other little spaces are filled with some small businesses that seem pretty stable. There's 2 salons and the visitor center and the Chamber of Commerce, I think. So kind of stable, low nonprofit or businesses such as salons that have good followings and they tend to stay. So we're hopeful that that will be steady. I am all but certain that ROB will not be renewing after year 10 and that they really, because of Ron's passing, the family is making decisions now about moving forward. And I think they're looking for a way to, if we can negotiate them out of their lease, I think they would want to do that, but I don't know that that's going to happen. With the health department on the second floor, they moved in, they're using that for office space. And now with COVID, they are looking for vaccination space and probably don't want the public coming in their offices like they used to. So they took a look at the Cutler space. Brian and his guys have been doing some work with them to figure out if it can work. It is a large space. They don't know if they want it long-term. And we don't know whether we want to lease it long-term at this point because during COVID, it's not really a good way to test out the market. We feel like we should do an RFP or do some kind of due diligence with a realtor to determine whether there is a long-term, more market rate paying tenant. Although we haven't come to any agreements with the City of Kent, I wouldn't want to just enter into a long-term contract without exploring those options. So basically, the reason to come forward tonight with this resolution is to move forward with conversations with the city. We have been talking, but they're not moving very quickly, and it's a pandemic and it's the health department, so that's understandable. But I just, like last year in January, we did the resolution to do a contract with the City of Kent Health Department, and it didn't finish up until August or September. So this gives the authority, for you guys to know what we're doing, and then reach some kind of an agreement with them that I'd bring back to the board later with the actual contract. But both the city is looking for a short-term lease, and we would be too. So if we can help during this health crisis, we certainly are willing to do that. But we also need to keep our eye on the ball with revenue, because the Gateway was pretty hard hit, or has been pretty hard hit during this time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is the second floor lease with the health department pretty stable and likely to be renewed at the time it's up?
I think so, yes. They have no interest in moving. They seem to like being right downtown. There's parking, it's accessible. I can't imagine that they were moved around for years in temporary locations. So I think they really would like to have the Cutler space and have that flexibility. Yeah, I feel good about them staying longer term than the retail spaces.
Is there any other governmental agency that might be interested in a long-term contract?
Well, that's what we'll look at when, if we are able to work with the city to help them during this health crisis and to generate a little revenue short term, we will do some kind of RFP or inquiry to see if there's another tenant that is interested long term. If the city determines they're not, and they may determine they are, and we'll still look and see if there's another option out there.
Claudia, what does the lease revenue look like compared to the revenue that was being paid by Cutler?
Well, we don't have any terms yet. That's what we're trying to work out.
What if you were approached by another leaseor?
I'm sorry?
What if you were approached by yet a different party for that same space? Do you have the flexibility, or would you be able to, and the City of Kent can't commit?
Well, actually, no, I mean, we're still under lease with RLB Phoenix. They really do want to walk away from as much as they can. They're contractually bound, but if we found an interested party, in conversations with Michelle Hartman, their preference would be that we contract directly with the new party, and then we would make some adjustment to their lease for that space. But those are all open issues.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Claudia or the staff? Hearing none, can we take an action then on the resolution? All in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, we'll move the resolution to the board. There is no executive session of the administration committee, so I'll move to adjourn at 6:55.
So
5 minutes. Never gonna be. see it's some kind of governmental agency there. They're never going to rent that space to commercial. There's just not. Now, a hair salon, where you make
Someone
appointments.
make a motion to adjourn, please.
And that's
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Marvin. Second,
second. Richard Brockett, second.
adjourned.
Need to stop sharing.
Okay. Hello, Dave. Hi, Mr. Brockett.
How you doing?
How are
Mark,
you? Everybody okay?
good to see you, but I can't see you.
That's okay. You're spared that. Be grateful. And hello to Marvin. I see him. There you go. Now you're unmuted. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Yeah, from the mysterious voice. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. Just, let's see. Okay. Dave,
Yes,
do you know if Claudia ever got a response to the 2 letters that she sent to the governor to get the driver's vaccine?
that was on my list of questions to ask her when we get to manager's report.
Good. I thought maybe she would talk to you about it. Okay, good. That was my big question.
They were great letters. Really good.
Sure were.
I like the way she followed up the second time with all the
Right.
charts.
Facts, yeah.
Very tactful.
I was thinking today when I was watching the governor and different reporters call and say, I've had some of my constituents have asked this question. If we could get a reporter to say, hey, what about the transit authority workers? You know,
Because she's right. They're right up close and personal with all these people.
Right.
Police don't even have it yet.
Richard, where did you get your shot?
Got my shot at Shaker University Hospital.
Now that's in a different county from where you live.
Didn't seem to bother them a bit.
Doesn't. No,
It's the
I'm getting mine.
USCH's,
I'm getting
yeah.
mine in Stowe. No, in Fairlawn. I'm going to go to Giant Eagle next week, Fairlawn. And it's okay.
Mhm.
Because, when you look at the CDC site, it says you can go where you live, where you work, or where it's convenient for you.
How did you get on their list?
I went, at first I was just going to wait until the county, but a friend of mine who's on the county health board said, the drugstores are getting more shots than the drugstores, and the pharmacies are getting many more. I think Portage County only got, I don't know, it was either 1,000 or 100. I can't believe it would only be 100. So I went on Giant Eagle's site, and it's really easy. The first time I had to wait a long time in line and I didn't get in. But yesterday morning I clicked on it, like I went on at about 7 o'clock, and I only had to wait 2 minutes to go into the site. And then you could choose, by zip code. And the closest for me was Fairlawn. I don't mind going to Fairlawn, that's fine. And I was able to sign for Reed and me. So we have a 11:45 and a noon on February 3rd. I could have gone on the 2nd, but I had 3 appointments and a dog grooming and the heating people coming, and I didn't want to try to change those. So we're going on the 3rd. Giant Eagle.
I talked to the county today. We're on about 4 different lists, but I called the county.
So am I.
Somebody else who had gotten theirs or scheduled for tomorrow to get theirs from the county. And she said, it's in the order in which you call in, which I signed up the first day. And she said, I hate to tell you this, you're way down the list.
Wow.
So you might want to try Giant Eagle, Dave.
I can
Or
tell you
somewhere.
this.
We might be on their list.
I can tell
Well,
you
no.
that
No, on Giant Eagle, you don't sit on a list. You
Oh.
go and they allow you right then, you go in and make your appointment. So I'm on a Mark's list, I'm on a Drug Mart list, but I have an appointment at Giant Eagle in Fairlawn.
Well, if Mark's or Drug Mart calls you, say, listen, I can't come, but I have a friend who.
That'd be good.
Well, it is 7 o'clock. Marcia, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, are we ready to call to order?
Yes.
Okay, I call to order the regular monthly meeting of the PARTA Board of Trustees, 7 o'clock, and ask Marcia to call the roll, please.
Ms. Beck,
Here, Kent, Ohio, yeah.
Ms. Biergard,
Here, Aurora.
Mr. Brockett,
Mr. Brockett.
Mr. Brockett,
Northern Portage here.
Mr. Childers,
Jeff Childers, Southern Portage County.
Ms. Davison,
Debbie Davison here, City of Ravenna.
Mr. Ginn,
Dave Ginn, Middle Portage County.
Mr. Mansfield,
R.T. Mansfield here, Franklin Township.
Mr. Murphy,
Jack Murphy, City of Kent.
Ms. Tipton,
Morgan Tipton present, City of Kent.
Mr. Vitale. He's here, but he's muted, so. Ms. Wise,
Karen Wise, City of Ravenna.
Mr. Woods,
Marvin Woods, City of Streetsboro.
Ms. Amrine,
Claudia Amrine, PARTA.
Ms. Baba. Marcia Fletcher, PARTA. Ms. Jurish. Kelly. Mr. Markey,
Justin Markey, Red Zone Andrus.
Mr. Popick, Mr. Troutman,
Brian Troutman, PARTA.
Ms. Schrader. Rebecca Schrader, PARTA.
Thank you very much. We do have a quorum, and I'd like to remind you that when Marcia sends out the request for you to let her know, there were 8 people who responded to say that they would be coming tonight. That was just a quorum. So if somebody didn't come, we were concerned about we may not have a meeting. I'm glad to see everybody here, but it would help for the planning purposes if when you get that message, all you do is click and say that I'll be there. That would be very good. The first item then is the minutes from the December 17th meeting. We need a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that.
Mark,
Second.
Marge made and Karen Beck seconded. Is there any discussion or does anybody have a question? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unmute yourself.
Aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. The motion passes. Thank you. We will not have any guest communications because of COVID. And we'll go to the general manager's report. Claudia, you had a very thorough report and I have some questions, but let me turn it over to you first.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming tonight to our meeting. It was kind of nice not to have to venture out into the snow, I guess, though, huh? This remote isn't all bad. We have a couple of presentations tonight. I have a brief presentation on the resolution that we'll be talking about, and at the end of the meeting, we'll have service awards for board members who have reached certain numbers of years of service. I'll go ahead and address your question, Dave, about Governor DeWine and the letters. I did get a call back from one of his staffers after the first letter, and then I contacted, his name was Jason, I contacted him before the second letter to find out about if there had been made, if any progress had been made. And the answer is we just don't have enough vaccines, and they don't have enough to meet the need that they already have. So I'm disappointed that essential workers have been kicked out of 1B, but we're still working towards 1C phase. We'll keep moving in that direction.
Is there anything that we as board members could do? Could we individually contact the governor's office and give some hope to this, to your letter that transit workers are essential?
Absolutely. In fact, I can pass along his information, his email, and that's where we direct the letters, where any transits from Opta are directing them to Jason Hill, I believe his name is. So yeah, that would be great. Any help?
That'd be great. If you could send everybody the email address, and if you could just take a minute and send a sentence or two, that would be great. Thank you.
Could she put the address in the chat?
I might be able to once I get back to my computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I just wanted to, go ahead.
One of the things I thought about reading your letters and in combination with the Kent Health Department wanting to lease out those spaces, there's a valid case, I think, to be made. You're going to have a lot more people using PARTA to get their vaccinations, especially if it's at the transit center.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And you're right. I mean, right now, anyone can book a ride with us or hop on a bus to go to wherever they're going to get their vaccine. But I would expect a lot more bookings once the vaccines are more available. And having it right downtown, it is really a perfect solution. You know, I don't fault the governor for his thinking. You know, he's looking to save lives, but I would have, you know, the argument is, look, our drivers are with the most vulnerable people every day, and that doesn't seem like a good mix. I think we should have them vaccinated if they can. Any other questions on that?
I don't have a question on that, but I would like to thank you and your staff for working really hard, not only on the pandemic and the changes in staff that have had to be made about that, but also the data breach that had to have caused you a lot of angst and time to get corrected.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know how to say that. It has been, the data breach was a very large issue. We're continuing to work through it. As I mentioned in my report, we do have coverage for that. So we are working with professionals on the forensics, and we've offered the security and the credit and identity monitoring. But unfortunately, it's the world we live in, I'm afraid of. It was very sophisticated. And I'm going to ask Brian to give a little overview about where we're at with that.
I'm happy to answer any questions, but really the short version of that is, and I've learned a lot, unfortunately, through this whole process, but the data breach came in through a phishing email. The phishing email was disguised as a legitimate email that came to us from our A&E RFP that we put on the street. That was the architecture and engineering request for proposal that we put on the street. The hacker recognized the proposal, sent in a disguised themselves as an A&E firm, sent an email into us asking for us to contact back to them through a simple click of the button. Once we clicked that link, which was inadvertent, anybody could have done it. Anybody could have done it. It looked legit. Once we clicked on that link, which again was disguised exactly timing wise and everything as business that we would normally be doing, gave that hacker the ability then to get into our an email account and start seeing who we talked to and what we were doing. And they spent unbelievably, about a week to a week and a half in our system, learning some basic idiosyncrasies of what we were doing. And what they used was our health tip program that we're involved with, which is our health insurance pool, which is coupled with OTRIP, which you're familiar with, and sent an email back to us described as a person who works for them, a legitimate person, and all they did is spelled health in healthtip.org with AE instead of EA in health. So it's very, very hard to see that email. And I will tell you that we have probably been attempted to be hacked in the last month. I'm going to go with dozens of times. My email today, I had a hack attempt on my email today. Claudia's yesterday. It was something that got in, and unfortunately what it taught us was we really need to have some diligence on making sure that old emails, and I would suggest this to anyone, that your old email files, that you clean them up on a regular basis. You're thinking to yourself, well, it's an old email. I went back home last week and looked in some of my emails at home. I had emails going back to 2004. So so I went back and then cleaned up even my own email. But we have had forensics. It's amazing what these forensics people can do. They can tell us where they were, when they were here, how long they were here, what they looked at while they were here, what information they got, where they got it from. So we have all of the loops closed. We've implemented some basically security training that we're going to give all of our employees as far as emailing and what to be looking for. I started one of these modules myself here recently, 2 days ago. And some of the things that they do is amazing. They'll get into, if you're into Facebook, they'll find out who you talk to. They'll create a Facebook account that looks just like your mother's, identical to your mother's, and send you an email asking you to click on this link because it's something she wants you to see, and who's going to say no to their mom. And the next thing you know, they're in your computer. So it's just really amazing the socio-economic way they're coming at you. It's a long-term 2 to 4 week process that they're going through to get into your email, just to get your bank account, or just to get your social security number, or just to get into anything in your account. So it happened to us. It's been painful, but we learned a lot from it. And unfortunately, we didn't make any large mistakes. We did have some personal information get out there from some of our employees, which we've protected by buying some identity theft kind of monitoring for them. And like I said, we've done some other things as far as IT goes, which is, I could get into some depth there, but it would take a little bit of time. But some different things we've done with the firewall to clamp it down, put some different software on there. So like I say, it was a long lesson, hard lesson, but we are moving forward from here. Any questions?
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank
I
you.
see that Virginia Harris joined us at like 7:10. Virginia, is that you?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, it is.
glad to have you.
Mhm.
Wow.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Claudia?
I just have one more question pertaining to the security breach. Do you have any reason to suspect that we should be on the lookout? I mean, I know you mentioned the cues as you're kind of giving us the postmortem, but do you have any reason to believe that we should be doing anything to, I mean, obviously monitor our emails safely and,
As a
and
board
that sort
member?
of thing? Mm-hmm.
As a board member, we don't have your personal information stored in our computer system. We don't have your social security numbers. We do have your home addresses and phone numbers, but those were not stored in the area that was breached. We have confirmed that. Otherwise, we would have let you know right away. But even with that, I would assume that your information is out there and take steps now to get some credit monitoring in place and take a look at your credit cards and be very vigilant and open your junk mail. A lot is coming through mail that looks like junk that I would have thrown away before, but people are opening accounts in names that, you know, either in our name, my name, or in someone else's name, but at my address. Unemployment fraud is running rampant. My husband and I are struggling with this right now. I don't know how they get the information, but how they get the money to be deposited somewhere else, but we're getting 1099s saying that he received income from unemployment that did not receive.
Wow.
So it's a mess. So I would be very vigilant and take any steps that you can, including in the article that I included. There's some good information there. I don't think you can be too careful at this point.
Good
Hey.
advice.
Dave,
Richard?
I got home today, got a letter from Jobs, Family Services, and it contained a 1099 for $1,941 from unemployment I had drawn. I haven't been employed in 22 years, and I immediately took steps as suggested in Claudia's handout, but I don't know the disposition of this yet. But somebody out there is walking away with $1,944 of state money, and I might have to pay a tax on it.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what, all that I've read is that as long as, if you report it and then you do file your taxes and you prove that you've reported it and it's fraudulent, that it should be okay. But we got one in the mail for over $11,000 today. I don't even know what to say.
I have
Yeah,
reported as suggested, but you
Yeah,
don't know what's going to happen next.
You should also make a report with the sheriff's office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what we've been told, and or wherever you live. For me, that would be Kent, but if you're within the county sheriff department, then you call.
Probably the sheriff is good. We live in the township, and a friend had a very serious breach and said that they called the Brimfield police, and the police said this is so prevalent they don't have time. They just They just cannot deal with it. So to call the county sheriff. Okay. The world we live in today.
Right.
Well, thank you for keeping up on top of everything and for your services. It's you may not all be there every day, but we know that the job gets harder all the time. Thank you for your service. Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll go to committee reports, and I'll call on Karen Wise. The administration committee met this evening.
Thanks, Dave. We did indeed. We had an established quorum with myself, Mr. Brockett, and Mr. Woods filled in this evening. We considered one resolution, and we did ultimately recommend that to the board. It sounds as though Claudia is going to, she gave us a presentation earlier in the administration committee meeting. Sounds like she's going to repeat a version of that, so I'll just stop there.
Okay. Thank you very much. The Finance Committee does not meet in January, and the Operations and Personnel Committees were not scheduled to meet. Is there any old business? Then under new business, the first item is Resolution 2021-01-01, a resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees authorizing the general manager or her designee to negotiate terms of an agreement or an amendment to the existing lease agreement with the Kent City Health Department to lease on a trial basis the former Cutler Realty Group 10 gallery ground level retail spaces in the Kent Central Gateway at 201 East Erie Street, Kent, Ohio. I'm asking for a motion that we consider this resolution. Karen moved.
A second.
Second.
Second by Morgan. Thank you very much. So it's been moved and second and is now open for discussion. Everybody has read the resolution and the wherefores. Where do you want to go from here? Claudia, maybe we should start with your presentation.
Sure. Let's give me a second here. We'll share the screen.
Any comments while we're waiting?
Oh, it sounded like a good idea.
Okay.
Well, if they give that seat there, I know 14 people who should be in line after the drivers.
After that, yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this resolution, in thinking about it and talking about it, we realized that there are a lot of moving pieces to this, and it can be a little confusing. I even get confused and I think about it all the time. But so I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of the state of the Kent Central Gateway and the options that we're looking at for moving forward. So just to recap a little bit of the history of the Gateway and RT with a bow to you, this starts in 2010 with the Tiger Award, but in truth, many years before that, a lot of community members, including RT, spent a great deal of time and effort studying the best place to locate a parking garage and ultimately where the Kent Central Gateway multimodal facility ended up being constructed. So that whole process was much more in depth than I'm going to show you tonight. But for the purposes of telling you where we're at, we built the Gateway because we received in 2010 the first Tiger Grant Award from the FTA. That enabled us to construct the Kent Central Gateway in partnership with the City of Kent. The Gateway, the award allowed us to build enough parking spaces to support transit purposes, such as like a park and ride type of a situation, but it did not allow us to build parking spaces just for the sake of parking spaces. So the city of Kent wanted public parking, and they contributed $4 million to the construction costs, and we were able to build the second and third levels of the deck, creating a total of 348 spaces. And through a lease agreement that we established in 2011, that the city and PARTA share profits and losses. We have a formula each year that we evaluate and we meet. We go through the previous year, and needless to say, in the early years, it was losses. But that has been a good relationship, and we are the owner operator, so we make the decisions, but we also make them in conjunction with the city at times when it's revenue related. And then in 13, the deck actually opened, it was constructed, and the transit portion and the parking deck officially opened in August. But the Gateway is a multimodal facility, and there's more than just transit and parking. There were also unfinished ground level retail spaces, which are on Erie Street, and the second floor conference room. So in the process of constructing, designing and constructing the Gateway, we had to do some value engineering to keep it within budget. And that meant that the building got squeezed a little bit, and it ended up being narrower than it had been planned to be. And so the retail spaces are awkward. They are narrow, and so and they were completely not built out. So they were completely empty. And we tried in 2014 to gain interest in finding a developer or a realtor or someone who would be interested in overseeing that build out and then leasing. That was not successful. But what was successful is that Ron Burbick was already investing in downtown Kent and in development, and he was excited about working with us. And so in 2015, we established a master tenant lease agreement with RLB Phoenix. And that means that because we are a public agency, Ron did not want to have the public record obligations for his rentals. And so this allowed us to, we have a lease with RLB Phoenix, and then RLB Phoenix has leases with the individual tenants, which means they are not public documents. And the beauty of that was that he agreed to build out the spaces at his expense, and then also find tenants and lease those spaces, and then pay a predetermined amount to us each year. So this slide shows the first 10 years of the rent. It's a 10-year agreement with an optional 10-year renewal term. And so you can see in 2015, we didn't receive any rent because that was the year he built out those spaces. And then beginning in 16, we began receiving rent, starting in 16 at 20,000 and moving up to year 7, where we are now, which is slotted to be 32,000. So the optional renewal 10 years is where we would be set to make money. The idea being the first 10 years, he gains back his investment. And then in the second 10 years, we start to receive some good revenue. And so if that were to happen, in the first 10 years, we will be generating 270,000. In the second 10 years, just over 1 million. And if we completed the entire 20-year lease, just under 1.3 million. So to give you an idea of how this played out after we signed that contract, as I mentioned, he built out the spaces in 2015, and then in 16 through 19, we had a variety of small businesses or nonprofits that he would lease and fill. They paid the rent through those years. At some point, I think in 18, Cutler Realty became the anchor tenant in the largest space, which is that east side retail space. nearest the Veterans Memorial. And they shared that space with Group 10 Gallery. Mr. Burbick had a love for nonprofits, and so he tended to give places a chance. And if they couldn't make all their rent, sometimes I think he filled in the gap with his foundation. And I think that was the case with Group 10 Gallery, sharing that space with Cutler. And so then in 2020, early 2020 or late 2019, I had some conversations with Michelle Hartman, who is his chief operating officer, and she indicated that, you know, the spaces, they built them out and they just, the tenants have trouble attracting enough foot traffic, and that she was concerned that if we didn't talk sooner rather than later, that they would be looking at walking away after year 10. Well, then COVID hit and all the closures started and the group bans of gatherings started. And so we didn't continue that conversation at that point, but have picked that up again. So that kind of brings us up to, that's where we're at with the retail spaces. The second area that I wanted to talk about is a second floor conference room space in the Gateway. For the first couple of years, we tried to rent those out as conference rooms for day rental, and we had a little bit of success, but overall it was really a problem and it wasn't profitable. And it's just not what we do. But we aren't caterers, so that didn't work out so well. But we started exploring other options, trying to look for a long-term tenant. And as you all know, we did end up in 2020 establishing a lease agreement with the Kent City Health Department. During the time 18 and 19, our deck revenues really did start to stabilize quite a bit, and we were feeling good about where we were headed. And especially with the health department moving in, that was a great way to use that space in a productive way. So here's where it gets, I think, a little confusing, and there's some moving pieces. We have 3 contracts that touch on this issue. So the first is the 50-year agreement with the City of Kent for the profit and losses of deck revenues. The second is that ROB Phoenix agreement, the 10-year retail space lease agreement with that optional 10-year renewal. And then the third is the new agreement with the health department. So basically, as we sit in year 7, we know that Cutler Realty has moved out. They were the anchor tenant that ROB Phoenix was relying on to make up a good portion of the income. The remainder of the spaces are filled. There are 2 salons and the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor Center. They are hopeful that the salons are pretty solid and they'll stay filled. So that's good news for now. I am all but certain that they will not renew years 11 through 20, which means it's good for us to look now at options for securing predictable revenue. And they also are looking to reduce their financial obligations that are currently in place. So the way I look at this is we need to find a win-win solution, because this is downtown Kent, and if one party fails, the others are going to probably fail as well. So I want to be able to look at those contracts and hopefully find a solution that can relieve some of the financial obligation for ROB Phoenix so that they don't just walk away. And if the City of Kent determines that they need the Cutler space, well, first, short term for vaccination, I'd like to be able to negotiate a short-term lease so that they can use that space. We can bring in some income, and that would give both of us the opportunity to determine, one, whether they need it long-term, whether they want it long-term, and for us to do some due diligence work in terms of looking at the spaces, seeing if they're marketable, hiring either a realtor or doing an RFP to see if there is interest that we could bring in more revenue. I am looking for a stable, responsible tenant. I wouldn't want to aim too high and bring someone in that maybe would leave after a couple of years if drop somewhere else. So we're looking for stability. And if the city ends up looking at that long term, I would feel better if we at least look outside and look at other options to make sure that's the best solution. And that's how we handled the other agreements. In terms of ROB, we had gone out for an RFP twice, and then with the second floor, we met with 3 or 4 businesses over the course of a few years, and Kent State, and nothing panned out until the health department. So that is the overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could any of those smaller awkward places be combined to make one that would be better used or more attractive?
I'm going to turn that over to Brian.
Not for the Cutler space. The Cutler space is one large area. It's actually 2 stories inside, whereas the west end of the building has 2 floors. The east end of the building, east of the walk-through, is just one large area. So, we've talked about this together in staff and said, we think that, testing the water to see if there's somebody out there that wants to do something with it other than the city of Kent would be a good idea at some point, especially based on, like Claudia said, with the city of Kent kind of having this short-term goal currently. So it's kind of like, in the odd part of this whole thing is it's kind of like we're like between things. There's nobody in there right now. RLB is kind of spiraling. The city of Kent is looking for something that fits good into this clinic situation, but isn't looking for something really long term. So it's really just kind of like everything's lining up for something, a bird in the hand's better than 2 in the bush kind of thing in a temporary situation. So I think that's kind of the best way to size it up. We don't want to invest a bunch of money into changing electrical or adding this or adding that or tweaking the inside of it or anything along those lines currently, because we don't have anything long term. So I just think it's kind of a good thing to, at least in my opinion, to allow Claudia to explore with the city, because it's nice having the city in there on the second. It's stable. It's the health department. There's some benefits that I gain out of it, which, like the smokers that won't leave the building, the health department's right there. They make them leave the building. It's a kind of a good thing for me. So there is some pluses to that. There's some stability having the city of Kent right there. So right now the marriage looks, at least in a passive way, like a good thing, especially on the short term. So it's a good question about having multiple people in that area. I don't know how you manage that without having a landlord to do it like Burbick was. You had the art gallery on one side and Cutler on the other. So you had a mediator in there determining whose space was what and who was using what. And I don't know that we want to get into that. So this might really be a real nice short term until we get out of this swamp that we're in with COVID situation that's still going to give us some revenue coming in. Because I'm not sure, I agree with Claudia, and she's not mentioning it, but she really did some yeoman's work getting Burbick up to speed on payments and all that stuff and getting us current. So right now we're in a situation where if we can give them some relief and still gain some revenues, it's a win-win. So that's kind of my personal take on the whole thing.
Other questions? Claudia, I know this gives you the authorization to negotiate, but in terms of short term, what are you thinking? 6 months, a year, something less than a year?
Yeah, we've been thinking at least probably 6 months to a year for the initial discussion.
Okay, other questions from anyone? Morgan?
I don't want to overstep my bounds, but if one of us should see an opportunity or have a conversation, I know that it's not our job to find a tenant and those sorts of things, but if we were to run across an idea or a conversation that might lead to some good real estate prospects for these spaces, would you welcome us to make those connections to you and with you and for you?
Sure. I mean, you can always give us a call and let us know if someone has some interest. That's how we did it before when we were looking for the second floor. Word on the street kind of a thing. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fine.
Good point. Other questions?
I have a question.
Hear it.
I had to hear it twice, Claudia, to follow it. Sorry. So would you potentially have the city of Kent work through Phoenix the way
No,
you'd let them out of their last
yes,
3 years?
Yes. So, well, we would let them out of a portion of it because that's 39% of the space. So we would do some moving around and we'd have to look at the ROB Phoenix lease and amend that to be less square feet and less revenue, and then probably amend the health department agreement to include the Cutler building.
Right. Okay.
And
So
in that formula, I want to generate more revenue than we would otherwise this year through ROB Phoenix.
gotcha. So Phoenix is still on the hook regardless.
They are, but they are divesting themselves of their properties. So I would like to find a way to ease that sooner rather than later, and then perhaps they'll be able to hang in there for the rest of the 10-year lease with these smaller tenants.
Okay. Thank you. Now I understand.
I'm hoping we can do that. I really just don't have the answers, but definitely if the health department is interested, we would amend both of those leases, I think, to accomplish that.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? If not, the motion has been appropriately made and seconded and discussed. I will ask for a roll call. Marcia, if you'll call the roll and unmute when you need to respond.
Mr. Brockett,
Yes.
Ms. Biergard,
Yes.
Ms. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. Woods,
Yes.
Ms. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale, Mr. Vitale,
He's saying yes.
okay. Ms. Tipton,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Davison,
Yes.
Mr. Childers,
Yes.
Mr. Ginn.
Yes. That resolution passes. Thank you very much. There is not a need for an executive session, and unless anybody has anything to add, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
Dave, we have
Oh.
service award.
Oh, sorry. Jumped the gun there.
We have one motion or one,
No. Service awards first.
don't we have a resolution too?
No, just one resolution.
Right.
Hello, hi. So we have yearly service awards that we traditionally give out to our employees and also the board. Those awards happen at 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 15 years, and so on. And we have some of the board members. So for 2020, we have 3 board members that have been here and receive a 1-year award. I don't know if you can see them, but it's a little certificate with a pin on it. The first one goes to Debbie Davison. The second one goes to Mike Lewis, and the third one goes to Morgan Tipton.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We have one 5-year award, and that goes to Karen Wise. And then we have a very special one for 10 years, and that's to Dave Ginn, and he gets a 10-year pin as well as an engraved desk clock.
Ooh. Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
So on behalf of PARTA, we just want to thank you for your support and your service, and 2020 is going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
21.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank everybody for your service. It's wonderful volunteer service commitment that you make. Thanks so much. Okay. And did everybody get the, Claudia sent out the where to send the support for transit workers? Yeah, if you go to the chat, you'll see it there. And we don't know. It might do some good if all of us write in.
Okay.
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt. Okay, thank you. See you next month.
Do we have to adjourn?
We don't have to do it. I thought we were adjourned.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
Hey, I'm sorry, I missed it. It's been moved
Wants to go hang his clock up.
Moved and seconded that we adjourned. Tried that before. Yeah, I thought I was.
You did.
Got to the end. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Thanks so much. Okay, all in
Good
favor?
night,
say aye.
everybody.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Now we got it. Thanks.
Perfect.
I thought you just wanted to chat a while.
Okay.
Hey, it's cookie time. If any